The morning mist hung low over the Scottish Highlands as Catherine stood before her wardrobe, carefully considering her choices for the day ahead. Today was different from her usual royal engagements. She and William had planned a special visit to Scotland, one that would take them through some of the most beautiful and historically significant locations in the country. The itinerary was packed with meaningful stops, each requiring her to connect with people from all walks of life. Catherine's fingers traced along the fabric of various coats hanging in her closet. She had always believed that clothing was more than just fashion. It was a form of communication, a way to show respect for the people she was meeting and the places she was visiting. Her stylist had suggested several options, but Catherine's instincts told her to choose something that would reflect both elegance and approachability. The blue coat caught her eye immediately. It was a beautiful shade of royal blue, tailored perfectly to her figure, with subtle details that spoke of quality craftsmanship without being ostentatious. The color reminded her of the deep Scottish locks she had seen in photographs, and she felt it would be a fitting tribute to the country they were visiting. The coat was sophisticated yet warm, practical yet stylish, exactly what she needed for a day that would involve both formal ceremonies and casual interactions with local communities. As she slipped into the coat, Catherine thought about the significance of this particular trip to Scotland. William had always felt a deep connection to the country, having spent many summers there during his childhood. For him, Scotland represented freedom, natural beauty, and cherished memories with his family. Catherine had come to love the country through his eyes, and over the years, she had developed her own appreciation for its rich culture and breathtaking landscapes. The mirror reflected back a woman who looked every inch the future queen, yet there was something wonderfully relatable about her appearance. The blue coat complemented her dark hair beautifully, and when paired with her carefully chosen accessories, simple yet elegant earrings, a modest handbag, and comfortable but stylish shoes, she struck the perfect balance between royal glamour and everyday accessibility. Their first destination was a small coastal town where they would be visiting a local community center that had been working tirelessly to support families during challenging economic times. Catherine knew that the people they would meet today were dealing with real struggles, job losses, housing concerns, and the everyday challenges of raising families in uncertain times. She wanted her presence to bring comfort and hope, not create a sense of distance or formality. The car journey through the Scottish countryside was breathtaking. Rolling hills dotted with sheep stretched as far as the eye could see, while ancient castles perched on rocky outcrops told stories of centuries past. William pointed out landmarks from his childhood visits, sharing memories of hiking expeditions with his father and grandmother. Catherine listened with genuine interest, storing away these personal glimpses into the royal family's private moments. When they arrived at their first stop, a small crowd had gathered despite the early hour. Word had spread through the community that the Duke and Duchess would be visiting, and people had taken time from their busy lives to come and see them. Catherine was always moved by this response. She knew that for many of these people, seeing members of the royal family was a once-in-a-lifetime experience, and she felt the weight of responsibility to make those moments meaningful. As she stepped out of the car, the blue coat flowing gracefully around her, Catherine was greeted by enthusiastic applause and warm smiles. Children waved small flags while their parents snapped photos, hoping to capture this special moment forever. Catherine moved naturally through the crowd, stopping to chat with families, bending down to speak with children at eye level, and listening intently to the stories that people were eager to share. The community center director, an energetic woman named Margaret who had dedicated her life to helping others, welcomed them with obvious pride. She had worked for weeks to prepare for this visit, ensuring that Catherine and William would see the very best of what their organization had to offer. As they toured the facility, Margaret explained how the center had adapted during difficult times, creating new programs to help families with everything from job training to childcare support. Catherine was particularly drawn to a corner of the center where several women were gathered around a table, working on what appeared to be a quilting project. When she approached, she discovered that they were creating memory quilts, beautiful patchwork pieces that told the stories of their families and community. Each square represented something meaningful: a local landmark, a family tradition, or a moment of personal significance. One elderly woman named Agnes invited Catherine to sit beside her and explain the intricate patterns they were creating. Agnes had lived in the community her entire life and could remember when the area was quite different, more prosperous, with thriving fishing and farming industries. But she spoke without bitterness, instead focusing on how the community had come together to support one another through changes and challenges. Catherine found herself genuinely fascinated by the quilting process and the stories behind each square. She asked thoughtful questions about the techniques, the choice of colors, and the meaning behind specific patterns. The women were delighted by her genuine interest and began sharing more personal stories about their families and traditions. As the morning progressed, Catherine's blue coat became a talking point among the visitors and volunteers. Several people mentioned how much they loved the color and how elegant she looked. But more than that, they commented on how approachable she seemed, how easy it was to talk with her, and how interested she appeared in their lives and work. The coat, while undeniably beautiful, never overshadowed the human connections that were being made. William watched his wife with obvious admiration as she moved through the group. He had always been proud of her natural ability to connect with people, but moments like these reminded him why she was so well suited for the royal role she had embraced. She never appeared to be going through the motions or fulfilling an obligation. Instead, she seemed genuinely energized by these interactions, finding real joy in learning about people's lives and work. The morning's final activity at the community center was a special presentation by a group of local school children who had prepared songs and stories about their hometown. Catherine and William sat in tiny plastic chairs, looking slightly comical but completely engaged as 8- and 9-year-olds performed with earnest concentration. Catherine clapped enthusiastically at each performance, her face lighting up with genuine delight at the children's efforts. One little girl named Emma approached Catherine after the performance, holding a drawing she had made specially for the visit. The picture showed two figures in what were clearly meant to be royal outfits, standing in front of a Scottish castle. The blue figure was carefully labeled "The Pretty Lady" in shaky handwriting. Catherine accepted the drawing with obvious emotion, promising Emma that she would treasure it always. As they prepared to leave for their next destination, Catherine took a moment to thank Margaret and her team for their incredible hospitality. She spoke about how inspiring it was to see the work they were doing and how much she had learned from their innovative approaches to community support. Margaret later told local reporters that Catherine had been absolutely lovely, so interested in everything we showed her, and so encouraging about our work. The crowd that had gathered to see them off was even larger than the one that had welcomed them that morning. Word had spread through social media and local networks that the royal couple was in town, and people had rushed to catch a glimpse of them. Catherine waved warmly to everyone, her blue coat bright against the gray Scottish sky. She paused to speak with a few more people, including a young mother who had brought her baby, specifically hoping to introduce the child to the Duchess. As their car pulled away from the community center, Catherine reflected on the morning's experiences. Each interaction had been meaningful in its own way, from the serious conversations about community challenges to the light-hearted moments with the children. She felt energized and grateful for the opportunity to see firsthand how people were working together to build stronger, more supportive communities. The blue coat had served its purpose perfectly, elegant enough to show respect for the formal nature of the visit, yet practical and approachable enough to allow her to engage naturally with everyone she met. As they drove toward their next destination, Catherine looked forward to the rest of the day, knowing that each stop would bring new opportunities to connect with the people and places that made Scotland so special. The afternoon sun broke through the clouds as Catherine and William made their way to their second destination, a historic castle that had recently undergone extensive restoration work. The castle sat majestically on a hilltop overlooking a pristine loch, its ancient stones telling stories of centuries past. Catherine had always been fascinated by history, particularly the stories of strong women who had shaped the course of events, and this castle had been home to several remarkable female figures throughout its long history. As their car wound up the narrow road leading to the castle, Catherine could see groups of people already gathering in the courtyard. Local historians, restoration volunteers, tourism officials, and members of the surrounding communities had all come together to welcome them and share the story of this remarkable preservation project. The castle had been in danger of falling into complete ruin just a decade earlier, but through the dedicated efforts of passionate volunteers and generous donations, it had been transformed into a stunning example of Scottish heritage conservation. Catherine stepped out of the car to enthusiastic applause, her blue coat catching the afternoon light beautifully. The colors seemed to complement the ancient gray stones perfectly, creating a striking visual contrast between modern elegance and historical grandeur. Several photographers captured the moment, but Catherine's attention was immediately drawn to the people who had worked so hard to make this restoration possible. The project leader, Dr. Sarah Mitchell, was a passionate historian who had dedicated the last 8 years of her life to saving the castle. She greeted Catherine with barely contained excitement, clearly thrilled to have the opportunity to share her work with someone who would truly appreciate its significance. Dr. Cass Mitchell explained that the restoration had been a massive undertaking, requiring not only traditional stonework and carpentry skills, but also careful archaeological investigation to ensure that every detail was historically accurate. As they entered the castle's Great Hall, Catherine was struck by the magnificent work that had been accomplished. The soaring ceiling had been carefully restored to its original glory, while ancient tapestries hung along the walls, their colors vibrant thanks to expert conservation work. Mitchell pointed out specific details that demonstrated the craftsmanship of medieval artisans. Intricate stone carvings, hand-forged ironwork, and beautiful stained glass windows that cast colorful patterns across the stone floors. Catherine asked detailed questions about the restoration process, showing particular interest in how the team had managed to balance historical accuracy with the practical needs of modern visitors. Dr. Mitchell was delighted by these thoughtful inquiries and led them to a special exhibition area where artifacts discovered during the restoration were displayed. Each piece told a part of the castle's story. Fragments of pottery from the kitchens, pieces of jewelry that might have belonged to long-ago residents, and coins that revealed the economic history of the region. One display case contained items that had belonged to Lady Margaret Stuart, a 16th-century woman who had ruled the castle during her husband's long absences on military campaigns. Catherine was particularly drawn to a beautifully crafted silver mirror and an illuminated manuscript that Lady Margaret had commissioned. Dr. Mitchell explained that Lady Margaret had been an early patron of education, establishing the first school in the surrounding area, and personally ensuring that both boys and girls received instruction. The connection to this historical figure resonated deeply with Catherine, who had always admired women who used their positions of privilege to create positive change in their communities. She spent considerable time studying the artifacts and asking about Lady Margaret's life and accomplishments. Dr. Mitchell shared fascinating details about how Lady Margaret had navigated the complex political landscape of her time while maintaining her commitment to improving life for ordinary people in her domain. William joined their conversation, adding his own observations about the parallels between historical and contemporary approaches to community leadership. He had always been interested in how lessons from the past could inform modern philanthropic work, and the restoration project provided an excellent example of how historical preservation could serve multiple purposes, honoring the past while creating opportunities for education, tourism, and community pride. Their tour continued to the castle's restored chapel, where a small choir from the local church was waiting to perform traditional Scottish songs. The acoustics in the ancient stone space were magnificent, and Catherine was visibly moved by the haunting beauty of the music. The choir had chosen songs that told stories of the Scottish landscape and people, including several that dated back to the time when the castle was first built. Catherine thanked the choir members individually, learning about their backgrounds and their connection to the traditional music they performed so beautifully. Many of them had grown up in the area and had memories of the castle in its ruined state. They spoke about how meaningful it was to see the building restored to its former glory, and to be able to perform in a space where music had echoed for centuries. The restoration team had prepared a special surprise for Catherine's visit. They had arranged for traditional craftspeople to demonstrate some of the techniques used in the castle's restoration. In the courtyard, a master stonemason was working on a decorative carving, using tools and methods that had remained essentially unchanged for hundreds of years. Catherine watched with fascination as he shaped the stone, creating intricate patterns that would eventually become part of the castle's ongoing maintenance and enhancement. A master weaver had also set up her loom and was demonstrating the creation of fabric using traditional Scottish patterns. She explained how the colors and designs had specific meanings, and how certain patterns were associated with particular families or regions. Catherine was invited to try her hand at the weaving, and though her first attempts were tentative, she quickly began to understand the rhythm and technique involved. The weaver praised her natural aptitude and suggested that she had the patience and attention to detail that traditional crafts required. The afternoon's highlight was a special reception in the castle's restored library, where Catherine met with representatives from various heritage organizations across Scotland. The room was lined with ancient books that had been carefully conserved, their leather bindings and illuminated pages representing centuries of knowledge and artistic achievement. Catherine moved through the group, listening to stories about different preservation projects and learning about the challenges facing historical sites throughout the country. One elderly gentleman, Professor James MacLeod, had spent his career studying Scottish castle architecture and had been instrumental in ensuring that the restoration work met the highest standards of historical accuracy. He explained to Catherine how each region of Scotland had developed its own distinctive building styles, influenced by local materials, climate, and cultural traditions. Catherine was fascinated by these regional variations and asked thoughtful questions about how historical architecture reflected the lives and needs of the people who had built and lived in these structures. Professor MacLeod was clearly delighted by Catherine's genuine interest and began sharing more detailed information about the specific challenges involved in restoring medieval buildings. He explained how modern technology, including advanced imaging techniques and computer modeling, had allowed the restoration team to understand the original construction methods and make informed decisions about repairs and enhancements. Catherine's blue coat continued to draw admiring comments throughout the afternoon. The heritage organization representatives particularly appreciated how she had chosen something elegant that still allowed her to participate fully in all the activities they had planned. Her outfit struck exactly the right note, respectful of the formal nature of the occasion, while practical enough for climbing castle stairs and examining detailed exhibits. As the afternoon progressed, Catherine found herself in deep conversation with a group of young apprentices who were learning traditional building skills through their work on the castle restoration. These young people had chosen to pursue careers in heritage crafts, dedicating themselves to preserving skills that were in danger of being lost. Catherine was inspired by their commitment and passion, and she spent considerable time learning about their training programs and career aspirations. One young woman named Fiona explained how she had left a career in modern construction to pursue training in traditional stonemasonry. She described the satisfaction of working with her hands to create something beautiful and lasting, and the sense of connection she felt to the craftspeople who had worked on the same building centuries earlier. Catherine was moved by Fiona's dedication and asked detailed questions about the challenges and rewards of her chosen profession. The castle visit concluded with a special ceremony in the Great Hall, where Dr. Mitchell presented Catherine with a beautiful piece of carved stone that had been created specifically to commemorate the restoration project. The carving incorporated traditional Scottish symbols along with more contemporary elements, representing the bridge between past and present that the restoration had created. Catherine accepted the gift with obvious emotion, speaking about how inspired she had been by the dedication and skill of everyone involved in the project. She emphasized the importance of preserving historical heritage not just as a link to the past, but as a foundation for future learning and cultural understanding. Her words resonated deeply with the audience, many of whom had invested years of their lives in making the restoration possible. As they prepared to leave the castle, Catherine took a moment to step outside and admire the view across the loch. The late afternoon light was casting a golden glow across the water, and the surrounding hills were beginning to show their autumn colors. William joined her, and together they stood in comfortable silence, appreciating the beauty of the Scottish landscape and reflecting on the remarkable people they had met throughout the day. The crowd that gathered to see them off included many of the craftspeople, volunteers, and heritage professionals they had met during the afternoon. Catherine made sure to speak with as many people as possible, expressing her gratitude for their warm welcome and their dedication to preserving Scotland's cultural heritage. Her blue coat fluttered in the gentle breeze coming off the loch, and several people commented on how perfectly it complemented the beautiful Scottish setting. As their car wound back down the hill, Catherine reflected on the profound sense of purpose and community she had witnessed at the castle. The restoration project had brought together people with diverse skills and backgrounds, all united by their commitment to preserving something beautiful and historically significant for future generations. It was exactly the kind of collaborative effort that Catherine admired most, and she felt privileged to have been able to witness their work firsthand. The late afternoon brought Catherine and William to one of the most anticipated stops of their Scottish tour, a visit to a renowned Highland school that had become famous throughout the country for its innovative approach to education. The school sat nestled in a valley surrounded by dramatic mountains, its modern buildings designed to complement rather than compete with the spectacular natural landscape that served as its backdrop. Catherine had specifically requested this visit after learning about the school's unique programs that combined traditional academic excellence with outdoor education, environmental conservation, and strong connections to Scottish culture and history. The school had gained national attention for its exceptional results, but more importantly, for its success in nurturing confident, well-rounded young people who were passionate about learning and engaged with their communities. As their car approached the school, Catherine could see that the entire student body had gathered in the main courtyard to welcome them. Despite the cool afternoon air, the children were filled with excitement, many waving handmade signs and small Scottish flags. Catherine was always energized by visits to schools, finding genuine joy in meeting young people and learning about their interests and aspirations. The head teacher, Mrs. Elizabeth Campbell, greeted them at the entrance with obvious pride in her school and students. Mrs. Campbell had led the school for over a decade, transforming it from a struggling rural institution into one of Scotland's most innovative educational establishments. She was passionate about her belief that every child, regardless of their background, deserved access to exceptional educational opportunities. Catherine stepped out of the car to enthusiastic cheers from the students, her blue coat bright against the autumn landscape. The children had clearly been preparing for weeks for this visit, and their excitement was infectious. Catherine moved naturally through the crowd, stopping to chat with individual students and showing genuine interest in their answers to her questions about their favorite subjects and activities. The school tour began in the science laboratories, where Catherine met with students who were working on advanced environmental research projects. One group had been studying the local ecosystem, monitoring water quality in nearby streams and documenting changes in plant and animal populations. The students explained their methodology with impressive scientific rigor, describing how they collected data and analyzed trends over time. Catherine was particularly impressed by a project focused on renewable energy, where students had designed and built their own wind turbines and solar panels. The young scientists explained how they were experimenting with different designs to maximize efficiency while minimizing environmental impact. Their teacher, Mr. Taucy-Trenade, Robert Fraser, explained how these hands-on projects helped students understand complex scientific principles while developing practical problem-solving skills. The innovation didn't stop with science. In the arts wing, Catherine discovered students engaged in remarkable creative work that combined traditional Scottish culture with contemporary artistic expression. A group of teenagers was working on a multimedia project that told the history of their local community through music, visual art, and digital storytelling. They had interviewed elderly residents, researched historical documents, and created original compositions that captured the essence of their Highland heritage. Catherine spent considerable time with these young artists, asking thoughtful questions about their creative process and their sources of inspiration. She was moved by their deep connection to their cultural roots and their sophisticated understanding of how art could be used to preserve and celebrate community heritage. One student, a talented musician named Callum, performed an original piece he had composed based on traditional Scottish melodies. Catherine listened with obvious appreciation, praising his skill and creativity. The school's commitment to outdoor education was evident in their next stop, the Adventure Learning Center, where students participated in activities designed to build confidence, leadership skills, and environmental awareness. Catherine watched as a group of younger students practiced rock climbing on an indoor wall, their instructor emphasizing safety while encouraging them to push beyond their comfort zones. Mrs. Campbell explained that outdoor education was integrated throughout the curriculum, with students regularly participating in hiking expeditions, camping trips, and conservation projects in the surrounding highlands. These experiences taught valuable life skills while fostering a deep appreciation for the natural environment. Catherine was impressed by how naturally the students moved between academic and outdoor pursuits, clearly viewing both as essential parts of their education. The visit to the school's greenhouse was particularly memorable. Students had created an impressive garden where they grew vegetables for the school lunch program while conducting scientific experiments on plant growth and sustainability. Catherine was fascinated by their innovative approaches to organic farming and their understanding of how food production connected to broader environmental and health issues. One student, a thoughtful girl named Morag, explained how the garden project had inspired her to consider a career in agricultural science. She described her experiments with different growing techniques and her plans to study environmental engineering at university. Catherine was struck by the depth of Morag's knowledge and her passion for using science to address real-world challenges. The school's approach to modern technology was equally impressive. In the computer science laboratory, Catherine met students who were developing applications designed to help preserve Scottish Gaelic language and culture. They had created interactive games and learning tools that made it easier and more enjoyable for young people to learn traditional languages and customs. The students demonstrated their apps with obvious pride, explaining how they had researched traditional stories and songs to incorporate into their digital projects. Catherine was amazed by the sophistication of their work and the thoughtful way they had combined cutting-edge technology with cultural preservation. She asked detailed questions about their programming techniques and their goals for further development. The students were clearly thrilled by her genuine interest and began sharing more ambitious ideas for future projects. The highlight of the school visit was a special assembly where students presented aspects of their work to Catherine and William. The gymnasium had been transformed into a celebration of learning, with displays showcasing student achievements across all subjects. Catherine moved through the exhibits, stopping to examine science fair projects, artistic creations, historical research presentations, and creative writing portfolios. The formal presentation began with a welcome from the Student Council president, a confident young woman named Isla who spoke eloquently about what their school meant to the local community. Isla described how the innovative educational approach had not only improved academic outcomes, but had also strengthened connections between the school and surrounding communities. The students had prepared a special musical performance that combined traditional Scottish instruments with contemporary arrangements. Catherine watched with obvious delight as young people played bagpipes, fiddles, and drums while incorporating modern musical elements. The performance was both a celebration of cultural heritage and a demonstration of creative innovation. Following the music, several students presented brief summaries of their research projects. Catherine was impressed by the range and quality of their work, from historical investigations into local clan histories to scientific studies of climate change impacts in the Scottish Highlands. Each presentation demonstrated not only academic rigor, but also genuine passion for learning and discovery. One presentation that particularly captured Catherine's attention focused on the role of women in Scottish history. A group of students had researched forgotten female figures who had made significant contributions to their communities and country. They had discovered stories of female clan leaders, scientists, artists, and social reformers whose achievements had often been overlooked in traditional historical accounts. Catherine praised the students for their thorough research and their commitment to uncovering these important stories. She spoke about the value of understanding how people from all backgrounds had contributed to Scottish culture and society, emphasizing how these historical examples could inspire contemporary young people to pursue their own ambitions and make positive differences in their communities. The school visit concluded with an informal reception where Catherine had the opportunity to speak with teachers, parents, and community members who supported the school's work. She learned about the challenges of providing excellent education in a rural setting and the creative solutions that the school community had developed to overcome obstacles. Mrs. Campbell shared stories about former students who had gone on to achieve remarkable things. Scientists, artists, teachers, entrepreneurs, and community leaders who credited their Highland education with giving them the confidence and skills needed for success. Catherine was moved by these success stories and by the obvious pride that the entire school community felt in their collective achievements. Throughout the visit, Catherine's blue coat had continued to draw admiring comments. Students and teachers alike mentioned how elegant she looked while still appearing approachable and engaged. Her outfit seemed to strike exactly the right note for a visit that combined formal ceremony with hands-on learning experiences. As the day at the school drew to a close, Catherine was presented with a special gift created by the students, a beautifully bound book containing examples of creative writing, artwork, and photographs that captured the essence of their Highland community. Each page represented hours of thoughtful work by students who wanted to share their love for their school and region with their royal visitors. Catherine accepted the gift with obvious emotion, speaking about how inspired she had been by the creativity, intelligence, and passion of all the students she had met. She emphasized the importance of education that challenged young people to think critically, while remaining connected to their cultural roots and natural environment. The farewell ceremony took place in the school courtyard, where hundreds of students, teachers, and community members gathered to see Catherine and William off. Catherine took time to speak with many individuals, expressing her gratitude for their warm welcome and their dedication to providing exceptional educational opportunities for young people. As their car pulled away from the school, Catherine reflected on the remarkable energy and optimism she had witnessed throughout the afternoon. The students had demonstrated that academic excellence and cultural pride could be perfectly compatible, and that young people could be passionate about both traditional heritage and innovative approaches to learning and problem-solving. The blue coat had served her well throughout the school visit, allowing her to participate comfortably in all the activities while maintaining the elegant appearance appropriate for her role. More importantly, the day had reinforced Catherine's deep commitment to supporting educational initiatives that empowered young people to reach their full potential while remaining connected to their communities and heritage. Evening approached as Catherine and William made their way to their most formal engagement of the day, a special reception at a prestigious Highland lodge that had been hosting distinguished guests for over 2 centuries. The lodge sat majestically among ancient pine forests, its stone facade and elegant architecture representing the finest traditions of Scottish hospitality and grandeur. This evening's event brought together a distinguished gathering of Scottish leaders from various fields: business, arts, science, politics, and community service. The reception had been carefully planned to celebrate Scottish achievements while fostering connections between different sectors of society. Catherine looked forward to these opportunities to meet accomplished individuals whose work was making positive differences throughout Scotland and beyond. The lodge's interior was breathtaking, with soaring ceilings, magnificent fireplaces, and walls lined with paintings depicting Scottish landscapes and historical scenes. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light throughout the reception rooms, while tartan accents and traditional Scottish music created an atmosphere that was both elegant and authentically Scottish. Catherine's blue coat proved perfect for the occasion's formal atmosphere. As she entered the main reception room, several guests commented on how stunning she looked and how appropriate her outfit was for the Highland setting. The coat's rich color complemented the warm wood paneling and tartan decorations beautifully, while its elegant tailoring ensured she appeared appropriately formal for the distinguished company. Among the first people Catherine met was Dr. Fiona Mackenzie, a renowned scientist who had made groundbreaking contributions to renewable energy research. Dr. Mackenzie had spent her career developing innovative technologies that could help Scotland become a world leader in clean energy production. Catherine was fascinated by her work and asked detailed questions about the practical applications of new energy technologies. Dr. Mackenzie explained how Scotland's natural advantages, abundant wind, water, and tidal resources, positioned the country to become a model for sustainable development. She described exciting projects underway throughout the Highlands and Islands, where communities were becoming energy self-sufficient while creating new economic opportunities for local residents. Catherine was particularly interested in Dr. Mackenzie's efforts to ensure that rural communities benefited from renewable energy developments. Too often, she learned, local communities saw their landscapes changed by large energy projects without receiving direct benefits from the investment. Mackenzie had worked to develop models that ensured local residents shared in both the ownership and profits of renewable energy installations. The conversation expanded when they were joined by James Morrison, a successful entrepreneur who had built several companies focused on sustainable tourism in the Scottish Highlands. Morrison had developed innovative approaches to tourism that celebrated Scottish culture while protecting the natural environment that visitors came to experience. Morrison explained how traditional tourism sometimes created problems for local communities, bringing economic benefits but also straining infrastructure, and sometimes changing the character of historic towns and villages. His companies had pioneered approaches that ensured tourism revenue supported rather than overwhelmed local communities, creating jobs for residents while funding conservation efforts and cultural preservation projects. Catherine was impressed by Morrison's thoughtful approach to business development and his commitment to ensuring that economic growth supported rather than compromised community values. She asked about specific examples of how sustainable tourism had transformed local economies while preserving what made different regions special and unique. Their discussion was enriched by the addition of Professor Helen Stewart, a cultural historian who had written extensively about Scottish traditions and their contemporary relevance. Professor Stewart had spent decades documenting traditional crafts, music, stories, and customs, working to ensure that these important aspects of Scottish culture remained vibrant and accessible to new generations. Professor Stewart shared fascinating insights about how traditional Scottish culture had evolved over time while maintaining its essential character. She explained how contemporary Scottish artists, musicians, and craftspeople were finding innovative ways to honor traditional forms while addressing modern themes and concerns. Catherine was particularly intrigued by Professor Stewart's work with young people, helping them understand their cultural heritage while encouraging them to contribute their own creative expressions to ongoing cultural development. This approach resonated strongly with Catherine's own interests in supporting young people's development while honoring cultural traditions. The evening's program included several special presentations that showcased different aspects of Scottish achievement and innovation. Catherine was invited to present awards recognizing outstanding contributions to Scottish community development. Each award recipient represented a different approach to improving life in Scottish communities, from urban regeneration projects to rural economic development initiatives. The first award went to Maria Santos, a community organizer who had transformed a struggling neighborhood in Glasgow through innovative programs that brought residents together around shared projects and goals. Santos had helped establish community gardens, local businesses, and educational programs that had dramatically improved both the physical environment and social cohesion in her area. Catherine was moved by Santos's dedication and by the stories of how her work had changed individual lives and family circumstances. Santos spoke passionately about the importance of listening to community members and supporting their own ideas for improvement, rather than imposing external solutions on local problems. The second award recognized the work of Duncan Campbell, a farmer who had developed groundbreaking approaches to sustainable agriculture that were being adopted throughout Scotland and beyond. Campbell had transformed his family's traditional Highland farm into a model of environmental stewardship while maintaining economic viability and providing employment for local residents. Campbell explained how he had gradually shifted from conventional farming methods to approaches that worked with natural systems rather than against them. His innovations had not only reduced environmental impact, but had actually improved soil health and crop yields while creating habitats for wildlife and contributing to local food security. Catherine was fascinated by Campbell's scientific approach to farming and his commitment to sharing his knowledge with other farmers. He had established training programs and demonstration projects that helped other agricultural producers adopt sustainable methods while maintaining their economic viability. The third award went to Dr. Andrew MacLeod, a physician who had developed innovative healthcare delivery models specifically designed for rural Scottish communities. Dr. MacLeod had recognized that traditional healthcare approaches often failed to meet the needs of people living in remote areas, where distances to medical facilities could be enormous and specialist services virtually unavailable. Dr. Wilson Blob. MacLeod had pioneered telemedicine programs that connected rural residents with specialist care, while training local healthcare workers to provide more comprehensive services in their own communities. His programs had dramatically improved health outcomes while reducing costs and travel burdens for patients and families. Catherine was impressed by Dr. MacLeod's innovative thinking and his deep understanding of the specific challenges facing rural communities. She asked detailed questions about how his models might be adapted for other settings and how technology could be used to expand access to quality healthcare. The evening's cultural program featured performances by some of Scotland's most accomplished traditional musicians. Catherine watched with obvious pleasure as musicians performed on ancient instruments, their music filling the lodge's elegant rooms with haunting melodies that had been passed down through generations. One particularly memorable performance featured a young woman named Caim Hay, who sang traditional Gaelic songs while accompanying herself on the harp. Her voice was extraordinarily beautiful, and Catherine was visibly moved by the emotional depth and cultural richness of the music. After the performance, Catherine spoke with Caim Hay about her musical training and her commitment to preserving traditional forms while making them accessible to contemporary audiences. The reception provided Catherine with opportunities to engage in substantive conversations about topics she cared deeply about. She spent considerable time discussing early childhood education with several experts who were working to improve educational opportunities for young children throughout Scotland. These conversations reinforced her own commitment to supporting programs that gave children strong foundations for lifelong learning and development. Catherine also had meaningful discussions about mental health services, particularly programs designed to support young people dealing with anxiety, depression, and other challenges. She learned about innovative approaches being developed in Scotland that combined traditional therapeutic methods with outdoor activities, artistic expression, and peer support programs. Throughout the evening, Catherine's blue coat continued to be a topic of conversation, with many guests commenting on how perfect it looked for the occasion. But more significantly, people remarked on Catherine's genuine engagement with every conversation and her obvious interest in learning about different approaches to community improvement and social innovation. The evening concluded with a special ceremony where Catherine was presented with a beautiful piece of traditional Scottish jewelry, a brooch featuring ancient Celtic designs crafted by contemporary Scottish artisans. The piece represented the connection between historical traditions and modern creativity that had been a theme throughout the day's activities. Catherine accepted the gift with obvious emotion, speaking about how honored she felt to receive such a meaningful symbol of Scottish heritage. She reflected on the remarkable people she had met throughout the day and their inspiring commitment to making positive differences in their communities. As the reception wound down, Catherine made sure to speak personally with as many guests as possible, expressing her gratitude for their warm welcome and their dedication to Scottish communities. Many guests commented later on how genuine and engaged she had appeared, noting that she seemed to form real connections with people rather than simply going through formal motions. The evening had provided Catherine with deep insights into the complexity and richness of contemporary Scottish society. She had met individuals who were addressing challenges and opportunities across many different fields, all united by their commitment to making Scotland a better place for current and future generations. As she and William prepared to leave the lodge, Catherine reflected on how the blue coat had been the perfect choice for a day that had required her to engage authentically with people from all walks of life while maintaining the dignity and elegance appropriate to her royal role. More importantly, the day had reinforced her appreciation for the innovative spirit and community commitment that characterized the best of Scottish society. The final morning of Catherine and William's Scottish visit brought them to what many considered the most spectacular location on their itinerary, a breathtaking Highland Valley, where they would participate in a special ceremony celebrating Scottish conservation achievements and environmental leadership. The early morning mist hung low over the mountains, creating an almost mystical atmosphere that perfectly captured the wild beauty of the Scottish landscape. Catherine had awakened feeling both energized by the previous day's inspiring encounters and somewhat melancholy that their Scottish adventure was drawing to a close. Each day had brought meaningful connections with remarkable people whose dedication to their communities and causes had left lasting impressions on both her and William. For this final day, Catherine again chose her elegant blue coat, which had served her so perfectly throughout their visit. The coat had become something of a signature piece for the trip, photographed countless times and consistently praised for its appropriate blend of sophistication and approachability. More importantly, it had proven practical and comfortable for all the diverse activities their Scottish itinerary had included. The conservation ceremony was taking place at a site that held special significance for Scottish environmental protection efforts. The valley had been the focus of an ambitious restoration project that had transformed degraded land back into thriving natural habitat while creating sustainable economic opportunities for local communities. As their car wound through the Highland roads toward the ceremony site, Catherine and William could see the remarkable transformation that had taken place. Where old photographs showed barren, eroded hillsides, they now saw flourishing forests, restored wetlands, and carefully managed grasslands that supported diverse populations of native wildlife. The project had been a collaboration between government agencies, environmental organizations, local communities, and private landowners. Over 15 years, they had worked together to restore natural ecosystems while developing sustainable tourism, renewable energy production, and traditional craft industries that provided employment for local residents. Catherine was particularly excited to learn more about this project, because it represented exactly the kind of collaborative approach to environmental protection that she believed offered the best hope for addressing global environmental challenges. The Scottish project had demonstrated that conservation efforts could create rather than eliminate economic opportunities when they were designed thoughtfully with community input and support. Upon arriving at the ceremony site, Catherine was greeted by Dr. Margaret Ross, the visionary ecologist who had led the restoration project from its beginning. Dr. Ross had dedicated her career to demonstrating that environmental protection and economic development could be mutually supportive rather than competing goals. Dr. Ross explained how the restoration had begun with careful scientific analysis of the valley's original ecosystems, using historical records, soil analysis, and other evidence to understand what the landscape had looked like before centuries of intensive use had degraded its natural systems. This research had guided their decisions about which species to reintroduce and how to manage the land for long-term sustainability. Catherine was fascinated by the scientific rigor that had guided the restoration work, and asked detailed questions about specific techniques and their effectiveness. Dr. Ross described how they had reintroduced native tree species, restored natural watercourses, and carefully managed grazing to allow natural vegetation to recover, while maintaining some traditional land uses that were compatible with conservation goals. The ceremony brought together representatives from communities throughout Scotland who had been involved in similar conservation projects. Catherine met farmers who had adopted sustainable agricultural practices, tourism operators who had developed environmentally responsible business models, and community leaders who had organized local conservation initiatives. One particularly inspiring story came from Robert and Mary McPherson, a farming couple who had transformed their Highland estate into a model of sustainable land management. They had gradually shifted from intensive sheep farming to a diversified operation that included sustainable forestry, wildlife tourism, and traditional craft production. The McPhersons explained how their changes had actually improved their economic situation, while dramatically enhancing the environmental value of their land. They now hosted visitors who came to observe rare birds and other wildlife, while their sustainable forestry operations provided steady income, and their workshop produced traditional woolens that were sold throughout Scotland and beyond. Catherine was impressed by their creativity and commitment, and she asked about the challenges they had faced during their transition to sustainable practices. Mary McPherson described how difficult it had been initially to change practices that their families had used for generations, but how rewarding it had become to see the land responding positively to different management approaches. The ceremony's highlight was the unveiling of a new interpretation center that would help visitors understand the restoration project and its broader implications for environmental conservation. The building itself had been designed to demonstrate sustainable construction techniques, using local materials and renewable energy systems while blending harmoniously with the natural landscape. Catherine was invited to officially open the center, and she used her remarks to praise the collaborative spirit that had made the restoration project possible. She spoke about the importance of projects that demonstrated how environmental protection could support rather than threaten community prosperity, emphasizing how this Scottish example could inspire similar efforts elsewhere. Inside the Interpretation Center, Catherine explored interactive exhibits that explained the science behind ecosystem restoration and the specific techniques that had been used in the Valley Project. She was particularly interested in displays that showed how the restoration had benefited different wildlife species, with populations of native birds, mammals, and plants all showing significant recovery. One exhibit focused on the project's climate change benefits, explaining how restored forests and wetlands were contributing to carbon sequestration while also providing protection against extreme weather events. Catherine found these connections between local conservation efforts and global environmental challenges particularly compelling. The center also featured displays highlighting the economic aspects of the restoration project. Charts and graphs showed how the conservation work had created new employment opportunities while maintaining traditional industries in more sustainable forms. Catherine studied these carefully, asking questions about how similar approaches might be adapted to different settings and circumstances. A special section of the center was dedicated to educational programs that brought school groups to learn about environmental science and conservation through hands-on activities in the restored landscape. Catherine met with several teachers who described how outdoor education in this spectacular setting had inspired their students to pursue environmental careers while developing deep appreciation for Scotland's natural heritage. The morning's activities included a guided walk through some of the restored areas, where Catherine could see firsthand the results of 15 years of careful conservation work. Dr. Ross pointed out specific examples of successful restoration, from recovered native plant communities to wetland areas that were again supporting diverse bird populations. Catherine was amazed by the transformation that had been achieved and by the obvious care that continued to guide the project's management. She observed how naturally the restored areas blended with surrounding landscapes, creating a cohesive ecosystem that supported both wildlife and appropriate human activities. During the walk, they encountered a group of university students who were conducting research on different aspects of the restoration project. Catherine spoke with these young scientists about their work, learning about studies that were tracking wildlife population changes, measuring carbon sequestration rates, and analyzing the economic impacts of conservation-based tourism. One student, a passionate young woman named Sarah, was studying how the restoration had affected local water quality and stream ecosystems. She explained her research methods and preliminary findings with impressive scientific sophistication, clearly excited about contributing to understanding that could guide future conservation efforts. Catherine was inspired by Sarah's dedication and asked about her career plans and the broader importance of the research she was conducting. Sarah spoke about wanting to pursue a career in conservation science, motivated by projects like this one that demonstrated how scientific knowledge could be applied to create positive environmental and social outcomes. The final formal ceremony took place in a natural amphitheater created by the valleys surrounding hills, where Catherine was asked to plant a tree that would serve as a living symbol of the restoration project's ongoing commitment to environmental stewardship. The tree was a native oak, carefully chosen for its symbolic significance and its potential to support diverse wildlife as it matured. Catherine participated in the tree planting with obvious pleasure, carefully placing soil around the young tree's roots while photographers captured the moment. She spoke about how meaningful it was to contribute something tangible to the restoration project, and how she hoped the tree would grow to witness many decades of continued environmental progress. The ceremony concluded with presentations recognizing individuals and organizations that had made exceptional contributions to Scottish environmental conservation. Catherine presented awards to several recipients whose work exemplified the innovative and collaborative approaches that had made the Valley Restoration Project so successful. As the formal activities concluded, Catherine took time to speak with as many participants as possible, expressing her gratitude for their warm welcome and their inspiring commitment to environmental stewardship. Many people commented on how genuine her interest had appeared and how thoughtful her questions had been throughout the visit. The blue coat had once again proven perfect for the occasion, elegant enough for the formal ceremony, while practical for outdoor activities and comfortable for extended conversations with people from all backgrounds. Catherine had successfully balanced the dignity required for her royal role with the approachability that allowed her to connect authentically with everyone she met. As Catherine and William prepared for their departure from Scotland, they both reflected on the remarkable experiences they had shared over the past few days. They had met people whose creativity, dedication, and collaborative spirit were making real differences in their communities while preserving and celebrating what made Scotland special. Catherine felt deeply grateful for the opportunity to witness firsthand the innovative approaches to community development, education, cultural preservation, and environmental conservation that were flourishing throughout Scotland. The visit had reinforced her own commitment to supporting initiatives that brought people together around shared goals, while honoring cultural heritage and protecting natural resources. The blue coat had become more than just a fashion choice. It had become a symbol of Catherine's successful engagement with Scottish communities and her respectful appreciation for Scottish culture and achievements. As they traveled toward their departure point, Catherine looked forward to the opportunities she would have to share what she had learned and to support similar initiatives in other settings. The Scottish visit had demonstrated once again Catherine's natural ability to connect with people from all walks of life while representing the royal family with appropriate dignity and grace. Her blue coat had been noticed and admired throughout their journey, but more importantly, her genuine engagement and thoughtful questions had left lasting positive impressions with everyone they had met. Scotland had welcomed them with characteristic warmth and hospitality, sharing stories of innovation, conservation, education, and community development that would continue to inspire Catherine's future work. The visit had strengthened her understanding of how individual commitment and collaborative effort could address complex challenges while preserving what was most valuable about cultural heritage and natural environments.